Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Open Door Show from Property CEO. My name's Ian Child, and as you can probably tell, I'm not here with the other half of Property CEO, Mr. Richie Clapson. He's decided to have the day off, which means I get you all to myself for the next half an hour or so. So, what is Open Door all about? Well, it's your chance to take a dive into the world of small-scale property development. On Open Door, we talk to the movers and shakers out there, all in an effort to give you the lowdown on what's happening in the world of property. We also shine a light on any areas we think could be a really good opportunity for new developers to take a look at. Now, as a property development training company, we get to see all sorts of issues that students encounter on their journey. And I thought, why don't we take a look at some of those challenges and kind of share a little insight on how you can deal with them. So in this episode, I thought we'd take a look at something that a lot of people suffer from, which is called a phenomenon called imposter syndrome. Apparently, it affects over 70% of the population. So I'll talk a little bit about what it is, how it affects us, and perhaps more importantly, what we can do if we're kind of struggling with it. So first question first, what exactly is imposter syndrome? Well, it's kind of a fear that we're basically not able to deliver to other people's expectations, and a fear that we'll be found out to be a bit of a fraud. And it's something that you can quite easily see happening for something like a new developer. So they're a new developer, never done it before, is going to be going into a world where they're surrounded by people that have been there, done it, got a t-shirt. Lots of people have been in that industry a long time. And so you kind of feel pretty exposed. You feel like you've got the L plates on and that everybody can kind of see you and is probably thinking, you've not done this before, you're a complete newbie and you're gonna fail. And people, you then believe that you kind of feel like a fraud because people are looking at you and thinking you haven't got what it takes because of your lack of experience or whatever. It is very common in other areas as well. So a lot of people feel it potentially in a day job where they feel that their boss thinks that they're not up to the job. Or it can be in other walks of life and other parts of life as well, where we're doing something, generally when we're doing something for the first time, and normally when it's quite an important thing. So whether that's a job, whether that's a life-changing thing like starting a family, having your first baby, buying a home, or starting a business, all of these areas can kind of give rise to this feeling that you're a bit of a fraud and that actually you shouldn't, nobody knows it, but that you're about to get caught out. Somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder and kind of say, hold on a sec, you shouldn't be here because you're a fraud. Now, it's not a medical problem. The fact that it's called imposter syndrome, it really is just a pattern of thinking. And it can lead to, obviously, lots of self-doubt, lots of negative feelings, and also not taking opportunities when they come along, because people kind of get rooted into those feelings, those negative feelings of feeling fraudulent. And so they don't then kind of push the envelope. They don't kind of step out of their comfort zone to kind of take opportunities when they come along. And actually, imposter syndrome has been linked to anxiety and depression as well. So some really serious ramifications in certain circumstances that come on the back of imposter syndrome. So why do we get it? Well, it's kind of rooted in our subconscious, and it's generally about the fear of what other people think about us. That fear of what others think about us kind of goes back to our cave dwelling days, where we would worry about being ostracized from the group, because if we did, then our chances of survival were slim, either because the group would turn on us or because we would be left out turfed out basically of the group and left to fend for ourselves, which was very challenging in those days. So you've got this inherent fear of what other people think about you. And so there is, it manifests itself in all sorts of different areas, most commonly in things like fear of public speaking. But here we've got it linked also to imposter syndrome, where you've got those feelings of being exposed and worrying that other people will kind of see through that and think less of you as a result. Now, how many people have it? As I said, around about 70% of the population are estimated to suffer from it. So you're in really good company. And it particularly affects a number of people. So perfectionists, high achievers, hard workers, entrepreneurs as well. basically people that are operating at the top of their game, and certainly people that are pushing the envelope, people that are kind of sitting outside their comfort zone. And of course, entrepreneurs generally sit outside their comfort zone a lot of the time. So it's in those environments, it's very easy to see yourself potentially or feel slightly fraudulent because you tend to be operating in a space that you're not comfortable with and a space that is alien to you. You've not been in before. There are some very famous high-profile sufferers of imposter syndrome. Perhaps one of the most famous ones was Einstein. He didn't really see what all the fuss was about. Didn't really felt that he deserved all of the adulation that he got, and that's, I guess, because when he looked at the problems that he solved, he saw that as just kind of, well, that's what I do. But for other people, yeah, they saw that as almost miraculous, and so elevated him on, put him on a pedestal that he didn't feel that he deserved. So, what are the symptoms of imposter syndrome? Well, there's a few. So, some of these, do any of these resonate with you? So, crediting any success that you have on luck. It's not because you were brilliant that you achieved success. It was like, oh, no, I was just lucky. There's obviously that fear of being perceived as a failure by other people around you. Another one that's really common is overworking. So basically being in a situation where you're in a job and you are working all the hours God gives. And the reason that you're doing that is because you want to basically almost convince people that yes, you're a fraud. Yes, you don't deserve to be here, but you're compensating by the fact that you're working so hard. And that's the only way that you can kind of meet those expectations. It can be in your personal life, things like feeling unworthy of attention or unworthy of affection. You certainly could be downplaying your accomplishments, so kind of hiding your light under a bushel, and certainly holding back from reaching goals that in theory you should be able to reach. So again, it's a fear of stepping out of that comfort zone because you fear that the even greater chance of you being perceived as a fraud. Where can it affect you? Where can imposter syndrome crop up? Well, it can crop up anywhere in life, to be honest. Work is a very common one, fearing what your boss thinks about you. And as I said, overworking to compensate for your perceived lack of ability. Perfectionism in particular. So people that are perfectionists quite often are demanding perfection and aiming for perfection, again, because they're feeling fraudulent about themselves and perceive that others might feel that they don't deserve to be there. Then by trying to make the result as perfect as possible, almost then tries to justify why they should be there. Certainly in a new business venture, you're going to find that everyone knows more than you do. So everyone can kind of see that you're a newbie, and you can have these feelings that you don't deserve to succeed. So where you're doing a new business venture, as of course, if you're new to property development, that would be a very similar case, then yeah, that's a very common area to find it. It can go back to places like school or college. That fear of putting your hand up in class and asking questions, again, potentially part of imposter syndrome, that fear of feeling like we don't necessarily belong here, that everybody else deserves to be here, but we don't. And it could be things at home. I mentioned kind of starting a family or buying a home. Those things can raise feelings of imposter syndrome, as can being in relationships. So feeling unworthy of the affection that people get from their other halves, again, can all be linked back to imposter syndrome. So if that is imposter syndrome, well, what on earth can you do about it? Well, you can't really cure it. There's not a sort of a tablet you can take. There's not a sort of a catch-all cure. But I thought I'd share with you a few tips that might help you deal with it. So the first one is basically to recognize it for what it is. I think with any issues that you face in life, it really does help to kind of get under the skin of them and understand what is going on, particularly when it relates to anything to do with mindset, because our brains are so complicated that just simply kind of taking it on face value that I feel this way, therefore X or Y, the reality is take a step back and try and understand why you feel like you do, because there's going to be a reason for it. And in case of imposter syndrome, it's not real. It does affect most people at some point. And interestingly, real imposters are not affected by it. If you are a genuine imposter and a complete fraud and don't deserve to be here, well, you will not suffer from imposter syndrome. So take some comfort from the fact that you're only being affected by imposter syndrome if you are in one of those kind of one of life's high achievers. Take some comfort in that. You've got to be a high achiever to suffer from imposter syndrome. Another thing that you can do, which sounds like a very simplistic thing, and it is, but can really help, is make a note of your accomplishments. So when we are affected by feelings of imposter syndrome, it, it generally comes in waves. We have these kind of low moments where we kind of dwell on it. Have a list to hand of your accomplishments that you can then refer to, because what that does is just kind of it reprograms your brain. You're making a list of things that you've physically achieved where you can honestly say, hand on heart, well, yeah, that was down to me. I did some hard work, I did this, I did that, and I achieved these things. Preferably recent things, but it can be anything. And then when you've got moments of doubt, you can refer back to that and remind yourself of the time and that the things that you have been successful at. And of course, all you're doing there is changing the narrative. So rather than have your brain kind of focus on these kind of negative thoughts, you're then kind of populating it with positive thoughts to kind of just basically change the narrative. They're very simple, but it works. Another thing that you shouldn't do with imposter syndrome is compare yourself to other people. We normally totally overestimate how good other people are. And the reality is that everyone else feels just as insecure as you do. And it's so true. I mean, I think it's probably a couple of things, actually. Not only are people feeling just as insecure as you, most people have got imposter syndrome as well. But also, there's this kind of we tend to fear and we tend to think that people are looking at us and judging us a significant proportion of the time. And the reality is they're not. The reality is that they're far too busy, worried about their own lives, to worry about ours a great deal. So you tend to drastically overestimate the amount of attention that you're getting from people and how many people are coming judging you. The reality is they're too busy being self-critical of themselves and worrying about their own situation to worry about you. It was a great quote by the ladies' fashion designer, Diane von Furstenberg. Now, I can't remember where she said this. I think she might have been being interviewed. And she was talking about, she's a ladies' fashion designer. And she said, you always look at the woman across the room and you think the woman across the room is so confident, so poised, and so kind of put together and so on. But that woman is looking at you. And for her, you are the woman across the room. Everyone's the same. It's just a big waste of time to be insecure. And I think that kind of, in a way, sums it up. Irrespective of gender, hopefully you've all had those feelings where you kind of see people that look the part and you kind of almost think, well, I wish I could be as confident or as assured as they are. Reality is they're looking at you and thinking exactly the same thing. So take some comfort in the fact that, yeah, other people in exactly the same boat. Talking to others can help as well. So help give you a bit of confidence when you can see that the thoughts that you're having are irrational. Particularly when you talk to somebody that's got a good opinion of you. So don't be afraid to share those feelings with others regarding imposter syndrome. You may find that they've got exactly the same issue that you have. I think you've obviously got to make sure that you trust that individual, maybe somebody that you know quite well. But it's such a common thing that when you find somebody that's got exactly the same issues and you can discuss it, it really does inspire you with confidence, because it can make some of those imposter syndrome thoughts dissipate because you realize that everybody's actually in the same boat. You definitely shouldn't get stuck in a cycle of I can't do this, and it's very easy to be in that place. So you want to be able to take action to get out of your comfort zone. And here I think that old adage of feel the fear and do it anyway is really important. So what tends to happen here is that because you're suffering from imposter syndrome, you start worrying about what other people think of you and the fact that you shouldn't be here, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, the thought of actually moving out of your comfort zone and sort of exposing yourself even more feels like a complete step in the wrong direction. So even though you should do it, your feelings are telling you, I don't want to do that. I don't want to expose myself any more than I'm already exposed. So you stay put. Well, one of the beauties of comfort zones is that uh, they expand behind you. So as you step into them, or rather you step outside them, so they expand behind you. Great example, public speaking. The first time you ever do public speaking, absolutely, yeah, nerve-wracking, and for some people completely debilitating. But of course, fast forward the 200th time you've done it, it's like falling off a log. What was all the fuss? What were you worried about? It's so easy. And that's because your comfort zone has now, your subconscious has basically got used to the fact that it's not going to die if you do public speaking. Therefore, and after 200 times, it's pretty confident that you're going to survive the experience. So it doesn't worry about it. So it doesn't send you those fear signals. So everything's a lot more comfortable. So the thing with imposter syndrome is to recognize that those rules still apply. So you still need to take a step outside your comfort zone, and then kind of feel that fear and do it anyway. And in a way, fake it till you make it. Even though you may not actually be faking it, you might just feel that you're faking it, but actually take that view, take that perspective, and you'll find that, yeah, your confidence will expand as you do it. And then again, those feelings of being an imposter will change. They will dissipate because you can see yourself that you're not only talking the talk, you're walking the walk as well. One of the things that I would also urge you to do is to celebrate your successes. So we tend not to do that very, very well in life generally. So whether it's a large success or a small win, doesn't matter. Just make sure that you actually celebrate it in some way. People that suffer from imposter syndrome tend to move on too quickly from their successes, and they kind of almost treat a success or a win as a sort of as a relief rather than celebrating them. So make sure that whenever you have something that is a cause for even a small celebration, make sure that you do celebrate it. You want your subconscious to kind of recognize that this is great. I did this. I got this success, and now I'm celebrating. And the celebration will reinforce that thing. Oh, yeah, I can do this. And as a result, again, it helps those feelings of being an imposter go away, because it wasn't luck. It was actually you doing a great job. And the art of actually, and the act of celebrating them just kind of reinforces that fact. Now, I mentioned being a perfectionist, and I'm a perfectionist, and it's a struggle. Your default position is to do everything to get it as perfect as you can, because if you kind of send something out effectively and do something that is only 80% of what you could potentially do, you feel like you haven't done yourself justice. Now, of course, one of the big arguments against perfectionism is, of course, that it's very time inefficient. So I could spend, if I've got a 2-hour job, well, I've spent 2 hours on a job, I could spend the first hour getting it to kind of 90% good enough, and then the last hour taking it from 90% to 100%. So now it's perfect, but I've spent an extra hour trying to get it from 90 to 100. Whereas I could have done a second job. I could have done another task. I could have got through twice as many tasks if only I was prepared to put stuff out at 90% rather than 100%. Now, with imposter syndrome, that in itself isn't the problem. The problem is about where you set the bar. So if you are a perfectionist, by all means, there will be circumstances where you feel that, that perfectionism is your USP. That's the thing that's kind of makes you what you are, sets you apart from the competition, whatever. And there is a need to be able to deliver that. But it's how you view where the bar is set. So rather, what tends to happen with imposter syndrome is you kind of think that 100% is the minimum. That's where the bar is. So I've got to get to 100%. Instead of that, move the bar. So instead, set the bar at 80%, 85%, 90%, whatever, wherever you want to set it, so that you then know if you do 100% or 99% or 95%, whatever the number is, you know that you're exceeding expectations, not meeting them. And there's a big difference. You can imagine getting to 99% of perfection is some going. And if you set the bar at 100 and then 99 is failing, whereas if the bar set at 80, then you're miles above it. You've sailed clear. So again, reframing your perfectionism in the context of where the bar is set can be a great way of, it doesn't necessarily impact your perfectionism per se, but what it does do is affect the way you think from an imposter syndrome perspective. I think another thing that can be very powerful is sharing our failures. Now, you've got to be quite confident and comfortable with doing this. But the problem that we've got is perspective. So when we look at other people, we tend to see their successes, and that's because that's pretty much what people want us to see. Social media obviously is full of that. So you never see or hear about the things that went wrong. You only ever see the things that went right, or the airbrushed kind of version of things. And the problem there is that our perspective is kind of flawed. We know our own imperfections and our own failings and failures, and we know our successes as well. But our picture of ourselves is a warts and all one, but our picture of everybody else is like they're all successful. So it's like, well, honestly, I'm just worse than everybody else, because everybody else seems to be successful and I've got all these flaws. Of course, the reality is it's just a question of what you see. Everybody else has those failures as well. So if you have conversations and open up with people about failures, you can then just, mentally, you get in it's reinforcing that perspective, that other people are exactly the same boat as you. You're no different to anybody else. And that's kind of, everybody has kind of got those same issues. I think linked to that is a recognition that failure is a positive. There's that great quote by I think it was Samuel Beckett, who said, "Ever tried, ever failed, no matter. Try again, fail better." And failure is a sign. Well, it's a sign of success ultimately. If you look at any self-respecting, billionaire, people that have made a massive success of their careers or their lives, or whatever, their early years are nearly always filled with kind of failure. There's all sorts of examples of it, countless examples of people that have failed. Abraham Lincoln famously was rubbish at most things he tried. Winston Churchill, very dodgy early days, and came good in the end. I remember some great quotes from Edison, who invented the light bulb, but didn't, funnily enough, crack the light bulb on his first attempt. It took him hundreds and hundreds of attempts. And did he fail loads of times? Absolutely. So he was a complete failure. He failed a lot more times than he succeeded, but he wouldn't have been able to succeed unless he failed. And I think it was also, there was something like the Harry Potter books were hawked around to publishers. I think something like 9 or 10 publishers turned J.K. Rowling down. And it was only on the 10th or 11th one that eventually succeeded. And of course, we all know how that story ended up. But again, all of these stories, all of the narrative is about kind of failure before succeeding. So if you are failing at stuff, it can be tempting in an environment where you're suffering from imposter syndrome to kind of frame it as, well, I told you, to yourself. Yes, everybody thinks I shouldn't be here, and actually I've just proved it because I failed. Reality is that failure is a sign that success is around the corner. If you weren't failing, it means you're not trying. So make sure that you're again pushing yourself outside that comfort zone. You're giving yourself permission to fail, and again, frame that in terms of your imposter syndrome. And finally, I think talking about reframing, I think that's really important for the imposter syndrome. And it's particularly relevant when it comes to property development and a role as a property developer, because it is so easy to think of, if you go into a new role, that, you don't deserve to be here, that actually everybody else knows more than I do. I've done my best to kind of learn some stuff, but the reality is I've got no experience. I've got the L plates on. I've done my homework, but it's no substitute for all these other people that I'm dealing with that have been there, done it, got the t-shirt, and they must all be pointing and kind of laughing and thinking, well, you're not going to succeed because you've never done it before. Now, there is, I think, if we think of what that means in terms of reframing the way we approach that world, I would say you've got to look at what is actually going on, because the the newbie developer is not the way to think of yourself going into that environment. And being newbie anything is not really the best way of describing yourself in any environment. What you need to do is to kind of take a step back and look and reframe it in a different way. So if I look at the role of property developer, I'm looking, it's a business opportunity. Okay, it's the idea behind property development typically is to make money. So my first question is, are we capable of making money out of property development? Well, property development is an industry that's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Lots of people have made considerable fortunes out of property development. So compared to perhaps another business venture where I've invented the motorcycle ashtray or equivalent, we know that this is likely to succeed. You know that this has got scope to succeed, because I'm not kind of going way out there and inventing something that there may or may not be a market for. Not only is it a tried and trusted route, I also know there's a massive housing shortage. So what I'm building is going to be in demand for the people that I'm going to be selling it to. And the other thing, of course, related to being a property developer is that I am not going to be I'm not going to be laying any bricks. I'm not going to be designing any kind of plans. I'm not going to be reading all the textbooks about planning law and legislation. I'm not going to be doing the conveyancing, all the plumbing, all the electrics. This isn't kind of the one man, one woman band that goes and creates a house from scratch using all their own work. Almost entirely the opposite. I'm going to have a team of hugely experienced people that are going to be doing all this for me. And if I add up all of their years of experience, if I add up all of the number of jobs that they have done between them, and I have people look at my business, which is my business and my team, then wow, here is a team that between them has got centuries of experience and have done many thousands, built many thousands of units of property development projects. So when we then reframe it and we look at who we are, it isn't a newbie developer. You're simply an entrepreneur who is pulling a team together, a very experienced team, to take advantage of a business opportunity in what is a very mature and established market. So you're not a trailblazer. You're following a path that many thousands of people have been down before, and you for sure will have some USPs about the way in which you approach that. You'll be looking in a particular area or to do a particular type of development, maybe. So you've kind of refined your business plan. It's not just have a go, but equally you're kind of putting yourself and reframing your position here as the entrepreneur. The other key thing about development in particular is to remember that unless you do your bit, nobody else gets paid. So you kind of call all the shots here, because every other person, whether they be your architect, whether they're an estate agent, a commercial agent, a lender, whatever, investor, they only get an income on the back of you getting out of bed one day and going, I'm going to develop a property. Without you, they don't get any money. So guess who plays the most important part in all of this? So even though you feel you may have the L plates on the back, the reality is everybody's looking at you and appreciating that without you doing your bit, they don't get anything. There isn't anything to be had. So you are actually a very important cog. And of course, you're not doing all the work yourself. So you're relying on other people to do it. So I think that ability to reframe your situation based on the reality, and that is the reality, and kind of push away those more negative thoughts about feeling like you're new and inexperienced. That is really helpful in helping to dispel thoughts of imposter syndrome. So there you go. A few thoughts on the dreaded imposter syndrome. Please, if you've got any comments on it, please do put that in the chat. Always interested to hear other people's perspectives on it. And if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about small scale property development, we've put together a free pre-recorded training session, which tells you, well, what it's all about and how you can get into it. It's available for a limited time. So if for whatever reason you try the link that I'm about to give you and it doesn't work, then please do pop onto our website or contact us through the website, and we'll let you know what free training is available. But the link that you want is propertyceo.co.uk/SFR, where SFR stands for six-figure roadmap. Basically, on that, we're going to show you how it's possible to make six-figure sums from those smaller property development projects. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Open Door. Many more Open Door episodes on our back catalogue and also to come. So I do look forward to catching up with you again very soon.